Hello, and welcome to Environmental Justice, an introductory training for environmental professionals. In this course, you will learn what environmental justice is and why it's important, how it came to be, learn how to recognize, prioritize, and minimize environmental impacts on communities, and to discuss the future of environmental justice programs on both the federal and state levels. Environmental justice started during the late 1960s and early 1970s as part of the National Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as NEPA, and the Civil Rights Movement. The first documented case of environmental justice was the Memphis sanitation strike of 1968. During this strike, African American workers protested the unfair working conditions and brought attention to the unfair dumping practice of chemically contaminated soils in a landfill located in a minority neighborhood in Warren County, though there were other landfills closer. In 1987, a study published by the United Church of Christ showed that minority neighborhoods had doubled the chance for a hazardous waste landfill in their community, and the proportion of minorities with 2 or more hazardous waste landfills in their community were almost triple those without a hazardous waste landfill. As an environmental professional, you have an important role in recognizing, prioritizing, and mitigating or minimizing environmental impacts from all communities. The first step you should take is to become familiar with the environmental justice programs, regulations, and legislation on both the federal and state level. On the federal level, the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, has a website dedicated to environmental justice. This link will be shared with you later in this presentation. At the time of this video being made, the following states have implemented environmental justice programs in state agencies: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Virginia, Washington, and Washington, D.C. Environmental justice concerns are a combination of environmental impacts and social vulnerability that results in multiple and cumulative impacts. When environmental data has been collected and it shows that one or more demographics are unfairly affected by an environmentally related cause, you may be looking at a community in need of environmental justice assistance. The EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. It is important to note that some states also have definitions for environmental justice that may differ slightly from the EPA's definition, and you should refer to your state's definition while conducting research. If you suspect this may be the case, you should work to identify and prioritize the environmentally impacted community and use the data gathered by reaching out to the community to inform decision-making processes going forward. You should look at addressing 3 main questions while collecting data. Question 1 is, are there deficits in the community as a result of an environmental impact? Question 2 asks you to identify who is experiencing the burden of the deficits. And lastly, how do we make sure that prevention or intervention efforts don't make these problems worse? Gathering the input of the community being affected is essential in forming a path forward. Part of environmental justice is ensuring that all parties have an equitable say in the outcome. The goal of environmental justice is equitable development. Equitable development is defined as an approach for meeting the needs of underserved communities through projects, programs, and/or policies that reduce disparities while fostering places that are healthy, vibrant, and diverse. You should keep in mind that equitable and equal are 2 different terms. The George Washington School of Public Health defines equality as meaning each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and resources, and opportunities should be allocated to specifically address those inequities to reach an equal outcome. This graphic by Tony Ruth depicts the differences between equity and equality. Ruth states, equity is a solution for addressing imbalanced social systems. Justice can take equity one step further by fixing the systems in a way that leads to long term, sustainable, equitable access for generations to come. The EPA's Environmental Justice website contains a plethora of information available on environmental justice issues. It can be found at the website listed here. On this webpage, tools and resources such as EJ Screen, which is a web based program that allows you to enter a location and evaluate environmental justice impacts or concerns by mapping and screening for specific criteria, are listed. Other programs that can be found here are the Enforcement and Compliance History online tool, otherwise known as ECHO, which allows the public to search for federal compliance histories for regulated entities. The Toxics Release Inventory, otherwise known as TRI, lists spills or releases of toxic materials searchable by location. NEPA Assist, which is a tool that facilitates the environmental review process and project planning in relation to environmental considerations, and the Enviro Atlas tool, which provides geospatial data, easy to use tools, and other resources related to ecosystem services. Their chemical and non chemical stressors and human health can be found on this website as well. Some states have created their own resources and can be used as additional screening and mapping tools. Environmental justice is a hot topic, and through industry ESG programs and other initiatives, more people are talking about environmental justice than ever before. Companies now see talking about equity and realizing that there's a need for change is not a diversion tactic, but a part of changing corporate culture. As an environmental professional, you may be wondering what your part is in recognizing environmental justice issues. In your position, you may be one of the first people to perform an environmental site assessment where you can recognize and prevent unnecessary exposure or risk to communities. You can also help ensure equal and equitable access to decision making processes to create safer communities, families, and environments. By recognizing environmental justice issues prior to projects being implemented, you could save your company and client time and money by preventing unhealthy environments and avoiding potential litigation. Look for opportunities where you can avoid, minimize, or mitigate potential environmental justice issues and for opportunities to promote healthy and sustainable communities. Encourage open discussions where you and your employer talk about how environmental justice affects your projects and company. When you're questioning whether you should conduct an environmental justice impact analysis, think about these questions. Are communities being negatively affected by the development or operations of a regulated entity? Is there imminent potential for a community to be affected by the development or operation of a regulated entity? Are there patterns of illness or disease reported in a community or area? Are these affected communities minority or low income? Can you physically do an impact analysis? Can additional mitigation and monitoring resolve the environmental issues and create a safer community, or is it a bigger issue that needs policy, procedure, or legislative changes? Using tools such as EJ Screen, which utilizes 11 different environmental justice indexes, and NEPA Assist, can help with identifying issues before they become problems and aid in your environmental impact analysis, which will help you develop a plan or path forward. What might an environmental justice impact analysis plan look like? Talk to community members or complainants to understand their wants and needs and expectations of your impact analysis. Conduct sampling of water, soil, or air to determine baseline or real time readings. Identify whether the problem or complaint is due to negligence, poor operations or planning, or if the regulated entity is operating normally. If there is another root cause of the complaint, explore that option here. Would these environmental issues be a concern in an affluent community? Evaluate health stressors on the community, such as an increase in sickness, hospitalizations, or emergency room visits. Bring concerns to a supervisor's attention. Use tools and resources found on EPA's Environmental Justice web page, such as EJ Screen, ECHO, TRI, and EnviroAtlas. Check for resources used in other governmental agencies in your state and in others. Keep informed of environmental justice issues on EPA's Environmental Justice Training Resources page. What happens next? Utilize a community problem-solving model. An example of a community problem-solving model is shown here. First, identify the issue, community vision, and plan for strategic goal setting. Next, evaluate the community capability for capacity building and leadership development. Advocate for consensus building and dispute resolution. Look to form multi-stakeholder partnerships and leverage resources. Solicit constructive engagement by relevant stakeholders. Practice sound management and implementation of strategic plans. Don't forget to perform an evaluation, review lessons learned, and replicate best practices. Keep in mind that no one is immune to environmental justice. If you find yourself in a community that has environmental justice concerns, ways to get the community involved and collect data are to solicit participation from the community in the form of individuals, organizations, or advocacy groups. Gather information and start dialogue with residents and stakeholders. This can be done in regularly scheduled meetings and include local or state government officials. Understand that community issues are complex and face different systemic root causes and need a unique approach. Understand what communities want in the development or redevelopment phases and what funding opportunities are available to meet these wants and needs. Consider the needs and desires of the community as stated by the community and not influenced by outside sources. Become aware of what self-help processes or empowerment the community has. Work with the community toward a collective vision and shared goals. Train residents to conduct community-led science projects or research, including air monitoring or water monitoring efforts. Talk to your legislators about shifts in policies or procedures to incorporate environmental justice screenings earlier in the permitting process and to implement environmental justice programs in your state. Keep informed of changes in policies, procedures, and legislations in your state. Thank you for taking part in this introductory environmental justice training. I hope you have learned what environmental justice is, how we can successfully create equitable and equal access to resources, and how, as environmental professionals, we can recognize areas of environmental justice concerns in our community and in others.